Hello and welcome to the Mission Manhood podcast. Thank you so much for joining. Today my guest is Adam Asher. He is the founder of The Edge of Adventure. I hope that you'll be encouraged by hearing more about his work, the story of how he became interested in exploring the world, and his call for all of us to be brave. Adam has a vision for a movement of people who are willing to push past their boundaries and live a life of meaning through love and service to others. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello, Adam.
Angela, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, it's my honor and privilege. I think very highly of you and all that you're working on, your platform, all the people that you reach.
Well, thank you. You are the creator and host of The Edge of Adventure, and I wondered if you might just kind of tell us a little bit about the work that you do there.
Absolutely. The Edge of Adventure, and you can look it up at theedgeofadventure.com. It is a video series that takes you off the beaten path to a location that maybe has been forgotten, to get to know some people that maybe have been marginalized or overlooked. And in the process, we get to know them, we fall in love with them, and we also get to know a fantastic organization, a group of other people who have decided to serve these wonderful people in this location. And it's adventure television for those that also have a heart for purpose, something that matters, something that is more meaningful than just travel. It's travel with a purpose. And you can look it up online at theedgeofadventure.com, find out more about it. There is a web series online, but there's also a series of podcasts and social media, lots of different ways that you can engage and get to know the concept. But it's really just an opportunity to highlight those who seek to serve other people who perhaps have been forgotten.
You know, I talked to you early on in the global pandemic, and nobody was really sure what was going to happen or how long it was going to last. How has this affected you? Are you pretty much grounded, or what about the people that you're interviewing? Has it changed things for them?
Well, certainly COVID-19, it's affected all of us. It's definitely affected the type of work we get to do and perhaps the timing of it. In my case, certainly I have not been able to travel the world like I would have wanted to this year. That's been the case for so many people. And so from a practical standpoint, it has been limiting, okay?
Yeah.
And certainly the most important thing to remember is that people have been hurting physically throughout the world because of this. We've had people who have died because of this. We have had people who've lost their livelihoods because of this. And to me, that's absolutely the most important thing, the thing that we should be very compassionate about and keep in mind. But certainly from a practical standpoint, it's affected what I would have chosen to do in terms of travel. But I will also say that just like you and I talked months ago at the beginning of all this, when we really didn't know what was going to happen, you have to make a choice and decide whenever something is, whatever it is in life that you're confronted with, that is thrust upon you, are you going to back down and surrender to it? Or are you going to meet the challenge and look for a way to get over the obstacle, to turn something that might be negative into a positive? And in my case, I tried to do that this year. I tried to build relationships with people using technology, doing more of that this year than perhaps I would have otherwise if I'd been busy doing other things. And the podcast, which is available on all across audio podcast platforms, also available on YouTube. The video version can be found on social media and things like that. It gave me an opportunity to virtually, through technology, travel to many locations and get to know so many great people.
I've been able to listen to a couple of those, and it really, you do really get the sense of being there. I think you do a good job adding some little extra elements that give you that sense of place. But I think it's so important to be able to pivot. I love the idea that you just figured out another way to connect with people.
I think that's what we have to do. And again, I know we're speaking specifically about COVID-19 and how it affected us, how it took things from us, how it, as a culture, it made us worry, and it made us suffer in so many ways. But individually, we have to decide: are we going to surrender to that, or do we look for opportunities to thrive? And that's really all I know to do is say, okay, I would never have chosen this. It's affected so many people in perhaps other ways that aren't as tragic or as devastating. But we had so many students that lost graduations, and so many uh, people who had other plans for this year they weren't able to fulfill, and it
Yeah.
affects you and it can depress you. And you have to decide, am I going to let it get to me, or am I going to find a way to beat it?
Yeah. Everything that you just described kind of lends to one of the reasons why I'm in this space is because I feel like men need some really practical tools to help themselves stay balanced. And I think a lot of what you just said is just an example of the masculine nature to go out and subdue the world. But it's also important to return, nurture yourself, and minister to yourself and figure out where your wounds are and offer that healing to yourself so that you can go out into the world and be a force for change and good and love in the world.
I think for all of us, knowing yourself is is key, and coming to grips with who you are and who you're not, and being okay with that, and learning to appreciate the gifts and skills of other people, and in some cases to depend on those. And that is the kind of thing that always motivates me, and part of what we like to highlight as we travel to these countries for the Edge of Adventure is to highlight people who, and tell their stories, who are giving of themselves. They've come to a point where they know what their gifts are, they know what their skills are,
Yeah.
and they're using them to serve other people. And it's an inspiring thing when you see that.
Yeah. It feels kind of scary to step out into that arena though.
Hey,
You
it
always
can be, but that's what bravery is for. And you and I have talked about it. That's one of the things. Again, back to what is it that I admire in these individuals out there who are living adventurous lives for a purpose. I admire the fact that they're brave, and it takes bravery. It does, because if you're caught in fear, then fear is going to limit you. And I think one of the biggest things you can learn in life is that fear is never the answer, because fear is going to hold you back. And I'm not talking about wisdom. I'm not talking about wisdom. I'm not saying be stupid. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying be wise. Yeah. But if you are controlled by fear, then you let that limit you. And it takes bravery to push past that. But I think in so many ways, it's a remarkable journey when you do.
I think you're really good at encouraging people to be brave. You have this voice that is very calming and comforting.
Well, thank you. I've always liked radio. I've always had a heart for audio communication. And we certainly live in a time where video is a big thing. And I make the video versions now of the podcasts. And
Yeah.
as discussed, I'm in the process of making television shows and films and things like that. That stuff's in production and progress. And I love that stuff. But I will always have a heart for radio. And I find it, when it's done well, it's a very it can be very calming and a very personal mode of communication.
Yeah, it kind of leaves your imagination to go where it needs to go. You can fill in the blanks with your imagination.
Theater of the mind, and that's what I love about it. And as I produce those podcasts, I try to do something. Certainly, as we open the podcasts, I do something to help take you there, something to let you begin to imagine what life is like there. And it depends on the episode; it's always different. But I want to take you there. That's a part of what the experience of the podcast should be.
That's kind of an interesting segue into something I had that I wanted to talk to you about. You know, we live in this really crazy time now where everyone is so divided and we're sort of refusing to see each other. And I was thinking about what you do in your work is you force yourself to see things that are not always pleasant. and you allow other people to see that. Just the other day, when I listened to your episode, it was the one about Uganda and the orphans. For one thing, there was a written piece that said there are approximately 3.2 million orphans in Uganda. And that stopped me in my tracks. Then when I turned it on to listen to it, those little girls with such joy, I got teary-eyed just listening to that. And it made me very humble because I thought about all the things that I have to be joyful about. And I wondered if you could say a word about that.
So a couple things come to mind. First of all, life is full of joy and pain. And I think we have to learn to embrace them both. And a part of what I attempt to do through the video series, hope to do through the film, through the platform at large, just in general, is to convey that, because there's pain out there, folks. I don't think that's a newsflash. You know that. There's pain in your own life. There's pain in the lives of other people. And yes, right now, estimates are that in Uganda alone, there's 3.2 million orphans. Now, that scenario is not unique to Uganda. There are other nations around the world with very similar numbers, but it is a big problem, and it's a very painful fact. But there's also joy and hope, and it comes when we find people who have made a decision with their own lives to do something about it. You can't fix the problem for everybody. One person can't fix this for 3.2 million kids. You can't do it. However, you can do something, and everybody can do something. And in some cases, you may be able to help one child. In some cases, you may be able to help multiple kids. And in the case of the organizations that are working in these countries, they may be helping thousands upon thousands. And it's a beautiful story, but you can't get away from the fact that there is real pain. Okay, so that's legit. That's a fact. But I love the joy when you see these stories. They inspire me. I'm inspired by the people who are helping these kids, and then I'm inspired by the kids. And to go back to what you mentioned, the audio, the sound of those young ladies sharing from their heart appreciation to their sponsors, because that's basically what you heard there, was them thanking their sponsors and thanking those who care for them and really just blessing them.
Yeah, offering that beautiful blessing.
And it's moving. And it's moving because it is real pain and real joy.
I think you kind of answered a question I was going to ask. I believe the reason some people just stay so involved in their everyday life and don't really look to try to see is because they're kind of afraid that if they see, they'll be overwhelmed with the pain part of it. But you kind of answered the question, like, how do you keep from being overwhelmed? Because you continually are exposing yourself to these really sad stories.
The temptation is to look away. I think we all face that. And I think in our lives, there are times where we do look away and we choose denial. But in my experience, denial never led anywhere good. And when you are willing to see the truth and you're willing to embrace the pain, your own pain, but also the pain of others, if you're willing to embrace that, and when possible to walk with them in that pain, then it also opens you up to amazing joy. Back to my point a minute ago, those things come hand in hand. There's terrible pain and wonderful joy. And you can't walk away from the pain and pretend like it's not there, because A, that's not real life. And if you do that, you're also going to miss an amazing blessing when the joy is presented. Sometimes you just have to be patient, but there's no easy answer. Life is not perfect. People suffer, people die, and you can't avoid that fact. But what you can do, and what I seek to do, is look for the stories of those wonderful people out there who have decided to do something and prevent people from suffering, prevent them from dying when possible, and to just give of themselves and serve in a sacrificial way. Oh, don't get me started. That's the stuff that keeps me coming back.
That's one reason people don't want to see, is because the truth is kind of inconvenient. I would have to maybe then do something. So you just want to keep it kind of at bay to protect yourself. But what we're seeing right now in our country, we're refusing to see in a different way. Like, it's convenient for me to keep you labeled in a certain way so I don't have to really see your humanity. And the episode that you have on from Latin America, The Corner of Love, where that group is dealing with all these immigrants and telling their stories and how varied they are and the reasons that they were fleeing. I think that was just an example of when we refuse to see someone's humanity, because it's easy to label them as, somebody that's going to freeload or try to take our stuff or cause us inconvenience, and not really be able to allow ourselves to see what they've suffered.
That happens all the time. And I think of myself as a pretty pragmatic, objective guy. I do know that politics enters into things, and real needs can become tools. They can become, weapons. They take a real need and they turn it into a political point, or they use it for political leverage. And I'm not unaware that happens. And I think that you have to kind of compartmentalize and look at that in a different light in terms of the politics of such things. But the reality and the human reality of what it's like to perhaps live a humble life, and for some reason that is not of your own making, to be forced from your home, to be forced to go make another life somewhere. Sometimes the people try to make it to the US or to Canada or to Europe or countries around the world that are doing better economically. We get it. Those become the opportunity zones, the areas that they try to go to. Most immigrants around the world are really just looking for the opportunity to start a fresh new life. And it isn't easy. Countries, so with so many immigrants, refugees, I should say, leaving Venezuela, Colombia has really had, as the country of Colombia has taken, it's been a big burden for them. It's been a big issue for them and the people there, because they're right next door. It affects them the greatest. And then in Nicaragua, these are the two countries we talked about in that episode you're referring to with Corner of Love. The immigrants, again, the refugees leaving Nicaragua, most of them probably ended up in Costa Rica. So it then creates a crisis in Costa Rica, and perhaps Costa Rica didn't have the crisis. They didn't have the issue, but they have to deal with the influx of the people. And of course, it affects us here in the U.S. as well.
That was kind of what I was trying to get at in a way too, is even with the political piece of it, it seems like only good could come from allowing ourselves to tell ourselves a whole story and not just make it some convenient political point. I feel like that's kind of part of what you do too, is allowing people to see the humanity between these bullet points on somebody's agenda, I guess.
So that is my objective. I know that these types of needs can be and are often used as political tools, and like I said, they can be used to try to make other points. But you got to know your lane. There are real human stories of real human suffering. That's the sad part. That's the part that breaks your heart. The part that restores you and is inspiring is that there are people in the world giving of themselves to make a difference in the lives of those who are hurting, people who haven't looked the other way, people who are giving, who love them so much that they're kind of laying down their own lives to help them. And that's the part that I find inspiring.
I always say that curiosity is our superpower, and I see that a lot in you. You just want to know more. You want to know different countries and different people and the way people do things. And I think that really leads you to a place where you can see and then love them and then share that with others. Is that something that you've always been as curious? Do you remember as a kid, were you just curious to know things?
That's a interesting way to look at it. What fascinates me is culture, language, communication, and people. Those are the things that I am curious about. Those are the things I do want to know more about. And maybe that I go to a country and I spend some time there getting to know the people. It's not my culture. That's not my culture. And I know that I've got my own culture. I've got my own background I am who I am, but I love to share in that with the people I'm visiting. I love that. So in that regard, you're absolutely spot on. Curious and interested in those things.
That curiosity and that kind of passion drives you to do these wonderful things, which I think it's really awesome to see someone take the risk to go after something that makes their heart full.
It is. I'm trying to give it my all. I have big dreams and work on it constantly. What's easiest is just not worrying about that and just finding something else to do and something else to distract you. That's what's easiest. What's difficult is coming to grips with a vision that you have in your heart, something you feel like you've been given, and you may not, when you start on that path, you may not know how to do what you feel called to do, but it takes real bravery to go after it. And I think you're doing an amazing job. I know so many people listening, they have that type of thing in their own life that they're going after and they're working hard. I can think of several mutual friends that you and I have. And then to the person who's listening and they're thinking, yeah, I had this idea. I got this thing. I'm really good at this. And I would like to build this. And you're at the early stage. The bravery is, can you go after it? Do you have what it takes? Do a gut check. Do you have what it takes to go after it, to come up against the barriers, to come up against the things that seem to be the end of the line, and then keep pushing, find a way to do it? I mean, that's the question, because it's a whole lot easier to just not worry about it, forget about it, and let me just distract myself with something else. But I think it's an amazing journey, and if you've got that calling to do something, whatever it is, I support you going after it.
You said the last time we talked, and this has meant a lot to me, because sometimes it feels like you're just really slogging through the desert, taking one step in front of the other in blind faith. But you said that one of your mentors had told you, just start, because you're going to be really amazed at what comes from just putting one foot in front of the other. Like, you just don't know where it's going to go, but that step of faith and continuing to take those steps of faith.
Absolutely. One of my mentors gave me that advice years ago, and he said, go after it. You'll be surprised the difference it will make when you are actively building your dream. You're building this project. And I think there's a lot of different principles maybe that go into that. Obviously, if you're trying to convey the vision to somebody and all it is an idea, there's a time for that. And that time is the beginning, because it's just an idea. That's okay. Don't be ashamed of that. But you can't stay there. You've got to be about building it. And I keep going back to the word bravery, because it takes bravery to build it. It takes bravery to believe in it, and then ultimately to share perhaps the vision with other people and to build it. But yes, you'll be surprised. And it really is our great adventure. As you and I have discussed, I like to think of the edge of adventure as a metaphor in many ways, because we all have our own adventure and we all will need bravery to live that adventure out. And if we want to get past and get out of what we think of as our normal everyday pattern that maybe we've grown tired of, it's going to take bravery, because we have to push past it and we have to go what I call beyond status quo. And once you begin to do that and you cross over that line, the edge right there, you cross over the edge into the great adventure and you start living beyond status quo. Go for it.
Kind of to ground all this, you look like a movie star. When people see your picture, they're going to think, well, maybe there's something special about that guy. But, where did you come from? And just a little nutshell about your background and how you got to where you are.
Well, Angela, I'm just some dude, and I find that very, very freeing. I'm not a movie star. I don't I don't need those things. I know I have a calling, and I'm trying to reach and fulfill that calling, but I'm just some dude. And the reality is, so is everybody else.
Yeah.
So is everybody else. Everybody else that's done anything that matters, or maybe they're famous or they're in the public eye, but they are just people. And it's important to remember that. And I think one of the things that can hold us back is this assumption that there's maybe something less about us, there's something more about other people. So the first thing I'm going to say is there's nothing special about me. I'm just a guy, and what I think has opened up my own potential in my life is I've learned some lessons, and I've come to grips with some realities, and I've made some decisions. And that's what really, I think, sets you free is you got to be honest about who you are and where you've been. And you said earlier what your wounds are and what your
Yeah.
failings are. Be honest about that, and then make some decisions to be adventurous in your own life. Build something, go after something, whatever that might be, whatever that looks like. You decide. That's your calling, but you got to be willing to go after it. In terms of my background, I grew up in Georgia, been a large family as the oldest of 5 siblings. I think it's fair to say I was always kind of a leader and in many ways the caretaker for the group. As I think about a couple of key points in my own background or development that have really helped to point out who I am or make me who I am. As a young teenager, I was interested in amateur radio, and that was before the internet was a thing. I know that a lot of people listening didn't realize the internet wasn't always a thing, but prior to the internet, I was talking to people around the world over the radio, and that was what was interesting to me. I was interested in radio and communication, but it also became a place because of what amateur radio is. It's radio communication with just people who have radio licenses throughout the world. So I was talking to people in Central America, Africa, South America, Australia on a nightly basis. And it opened up for me, even as a young teenager, it opened up the world.
Did you
And
have a radio name?
so great question, the way that works is you actually have a call sign, much like when you listen to radio stations on the FM dial or the AM dial, they have call signs and they're all letters, right? We're familiar with that. In amateur radio, depending on the zone that you're in, and it depends on the country, right? But in the US, depending on the zone you're in, I was down here in the Southeast, so I was in zone 4. So my call sign, and I don't know that I've ever said this on a podcast, so congrats, you got this out of me. I'm N4SQZ is my call sign, amateur radio call sign, N4SQZ.
You know what I was thinking of was the CB radio,
It's
because
similar.
everybody had weird names on CB
A
radio.
handle, right? So it's similar. I think for people who are not familiar with amateur radio, the best way to describe it would be to liken it to CB radio. It's just more. You have to have a license, and there's certain things about the communication. Whereas CB radio can get a little suspect or a little off color, right?
Uh-huh.
The amateur radio does not, based on the fact that everybody's licensed, and you don't want to lose your license, so people don't do the things they're not supposed to. But it opened up the world for me, and I that's really where I began to learn Spanish and to become interested in languages and culture in so many ways. Right there from my radio set in my room as a teenager, I was in my own mind and imagination traveling around the world. I'd talk to somebody, find out where they were, look it up on a globe or a map.
It makes me curious to know, was that just some kind of fluke? Was that something your family was involved in? How did you get involved in that?
I think a little of both, maybe. So my grandfather, my dad's dad, was his entire career and life, professional life, was in the radio realm to some degree. And I also never really knew him. And he died when I was young. And I mean, I did know him, but not really. I met him a few times and do remember, but I didn't really have the relationship with him. And so I was just naturally drawn to radio. And I think that, who knows, maybe that was just in my DNA. I was drawn to radio. And then my parents and my grandmother, they all noticed that, this was like your grandfather. This was like your grandfather. He liked this sort of thing. And I think that maybe further motivated me to honor him.
Yeah, that's really a good story. One thing that I notice is you have a special, it seems like you have a special love for kids when you're in Mexico, or I met you through Instagram, and one of the first things that I saw was you were doing this call with this little boy, and he was telling you about his metal detector. Do you remember that?
Of course.
I love that so much. And I'm like, this guy is really so special, because the little boy just went on and on and on. And you were just so patient with him. And that was really sweet. I think that you have a real love for people, especially those who might be otherwise overlooked. That kind of comes out in a lot of the work that you do.
I hope it does, because I also hope it's true. I mean, I do care, and I think parts of my life, as I grew into that and learned to understand it, it was a bit of a rough journey. I mean, there were times where I'd tell you I was heartbroken, and maybe is almost incapacitated by the pain other people were feeling. You can't stay there, right? You're no good or no help to anybody if you're incapacitated, or somebody else's pain becomes your pain, and then you can't function. But as I grew, I guess I realized that I feel that in a way. And I know there's different names for that, and I didn't know at the time, but whatever. It's just the kind of thing that I learned to manage. I can feel the pain and do what I can to help. I also know that I can only do what I can do, and I focus on that. And I understand that I'm nobody's savior. But yes, I do love kids, and I think that's probably goes back to two things in particular. One is being the oldest of 5, and then also my grandfather on my mom's side. He was always very good with kids and very playful, and he would tease, but in a way that would build up the kids. And so I think the way that I deal with kids is probably the most like my mom's father. It's how he was. And then, of course, I've raised a son of my own. One day we'll get him on the show. He can tell you how, if I messed him up or if I did okay.
Yeah, I'll have to pick his brain a little bit. I wonder, what are you dreaming of next? When all the restrictions are gone, are you trying to plan some stuff, or is it too early for that?
It's certainly not too early. The restrictions absolutely are still a big deal, and they're starting to be loosened a little bit, but no, they absolutely are still a barrier, right, for international travel. But I'm not too worried about that. I know that's going to come back. Again, my concern is that people be okay, that they're safe, and getting their lives back, and that we get the economies back, and those sorts of things. Those are the most important. But as this time has, let's call it the downtime, which we all learned to function. But it was a different type of time. I've been using that time to be productive and to position myself for the next steps. And what am I dreaming of? That's what you ask. I'm dreaming of taking this concept and the platform and all the different ways that you might see the Edge of Adventure presented online. Again, there's a podcast, there's a web series, there's all the other social posts and blog posts, and there's the real-time adventure we took when we went to Mexico and the orphanage. And I want to take that concept and that heart and get it to the people in the form of a video series for streaming, as in television, modern day TV for streaming on a major platform. And the team and and there's a great team behind me that I'm extremely thankful for. They have helped me take my dreams and just dream even bigger. They've brought so many great skills and talents of their own, and I will forever be thankful for them. But the team and I are working on that so that when the time is right, when we clear COVID-19, and we're getting very close, we're able to jump into action, get those produced, and ultimately get them distributed to people around the world in a way that is entertaining. It's meant to be entertainment. It is meant to challenge you. It's meant to inspire you. And I think as you watch the episodes, your heart's going to break and your heart's going to be restored all at the same time.
I look forward to all of that coming to fruition. And I know that you are a very busy man, and I really thank you and appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today.
Well, Angela, thank you. I will tell you, you have a great way of interviewing. You have a great way of talking with people. And I always enjoy talking to you. As I said at the beginning, very proud of what you're building, what you've already built, but I know you're also working on the next phases and the ways that this is going to grow and become even bigger and more impactful. So thank you for letting me have the opportunity to share. Thanks for making me a part of what you're doing. I find it humbling and encouraging all at the same time.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here. And did we tell everybody, do you think everybody knows how to contact you on Instagram or?
I hope so. Let's just do it this way. Go to theedgeofadventure.com. That's theedgeofadventure.com. Or the other website, similar, but they're different. You can also look me up personally at adamasher.com. That's adamasher.com. Either way, you'll find me and you can connect with me. If you look for the hashtag The Edge of Adventure, pretty much on any social media platform, you're going to find me. And I'd love to connect with you there. I'd love to add you to the group of friends and family, because that's really what I feel like we're building. A group of people that want to live for something more. A group of people that love people for who they are and that also want to serve other people in some way with whatever their own gifts and talents are, serve them in some way. This is what I want to see. People ask me, what is the edge of adventure? And I think absolutely I can answer it in a number of ways. It's a digital platform. It's a streaming series, web series. It's hopefully soon to be a film. It's a podcast. It's all these things. But what I think and what I want it to be more than anything else, and what I feel in my heart it is that it's a movement. It's a movement of bravery and a movement in culture of service and to put other people first.
Yeah, a movement of love. And
It's a great word. Let's start using that word.
Yeah, that's my favorite word. I think we've said this before. When you get to a certain level, you need something more. And I think that's what you really encourage people to do, is to move from life is all about me to I want my life to be about life. I want to contribute. I want to use my life to contribute. I feel like that's what you're inviting people to, is an experience to go deeper and to give back in a way that ultimately brings life back to you. It's just that continual flow. So that's really exciting.
Well, as usual, Angela, you've got a great way with words. You have stated that very well. I may just listen back, write it down, and just copy.
You can use it.
Great job. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
God bless.